Hello, friends. Welcome back to another video. Today, we've brought you another incredible story from history. Stay with us until the end as we explore.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into what is honestly one of the most mind-bending historical mysteries ever uncovered, the Indus Valley Civilization. We're talking about an ancient society that was absolutely staggering in its scale. It was incredibly modern in its design, and, get this, almost perfectly peaceful. But despite all of that immense success, it just completely disappeared. I mean, really think about this for a second. How does an advanced, peaceful civilization of millions simply vanish without a trace? It's a pretty chilling question. To figure out what actually happened to these people and why their thriving world just collapsed, we really have to sift through the physical evidence they left behind in the dirt. And that is the core focus of our explainer today. Section 1. A Lost World Discovered. Okay, let's dive into this. To understand this lost world, we first have to look at how it was accidentally discovered. Picture this. It's 1829, and a deserting British East India Company's soldier named James Lewis is traveling undercover. By total chance, he stumbles upon these massive, unknown ruins in the Punjab region. He documents his findings, but he is completely oblivious to the fact that he's just found the ancient city of Harappa. It actually wasn't until the 1920s that large-scale excavations showed us just how insanely old this civilization was. If we track it back, farming settlements started around 7000 BC. Then, by 5500 BC, we start seeing urbanization, public buildings, trade routes, that sort of thing. And by 2600 BC, they had built incredibly advanced cities. It was this slow, massive climb to a real, prosperous peak, which honestly makes their sudden decline around 1900 BC all the more shocking. 1,400. That's a massive number, right? Well, to date, over 1,400 ancient sites from this civilization have been unearthed across present-day Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India, with about 900 of those sitting in India alone. So we're not just talking about a couple of scattered towns here. This was a sprawling, completely dominant society of the Bronze Age. It easily rivaled the Egyptian and Mesopotamian empires as one of human history's oldest and most expansive networks.
Section 2. The Ancient Urban Utopia. Look, before we can even try to solve the mystery of their disappearance, we have to establish exactly what it is that was lost. And what was lost was an astonishingly modern way of life. By 2600 BC, they were building multi-story houses out of standardized bricks, like bricks that were all the exact same, uniform size. They had in-house toilets, dedicated bathing areas, covered gutters on the roads, and proper drainage systems just to carry waste away. I mean, they even had trees lining the footpaths and public dustbins for trash. In terms of urban planning, their infrastructure rivaled and, honestly, in some cases totally exceeded a lot of modern cities today.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how bizarre they were compared to their contemporaries. When you look at societies in Egypt and Mesopotamia, societies famous for grand pharaohs, giant religious temples, and super brutal warfare, the Indus Valley is incredibly quiet. Archaeologists have literally found 0 religious sites, no royal tombs, no palaces, absolutely no evidence of a monarch, a strict social hierarchy, or even an army. None. They seem to have just lived happily and peacefully, protected from floods and wild animals by their city walls, with basically no natural human enemies.
So what was important to them? Well, perhaps the ultimate symbol of this peaceful, community-focused culture was found in Mohenjo-Daro. The name translates to the Mound of the Dead, and because it was just exceptionally clean, historians think it was likely their capital. But the iconic attraction in the center wasn't some massive king's palace, it was the Great Bath. This was a massive, 900-square-foot, multi-story swimming pool. It was 2.4 meters deep, built with burnt bricks, and, this blew my mind, it was actually waterproofed using natural tar. It was a monument purely dedicated to public well-being.
Moving on to Section 3, an uncrackable code.
Now, you might be wondering, if this society was so advanced and peaceful, why can't we just, read their records to find out what happened to them? Well, that brings us to the ultimate roadblock in this entire investigation: their script. Over 4,000 artifacts have been found with their writing on them. Most of them are these tiny little stone seals measuring just 2.5 to 5 square centimeters. And engraved on those tiny seals, historians have identified 400 distinct signs. To put that into perspective, our English alphabet has just 26 letters.
Because they have over 400 symbols, and we're talking everything from stick figures to little fish and birds,
Historians classify the Indus script as logosyllabic. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically it means a single symbol expresses a complete word or a specific phonetic sound. It's very much like Egyptian hieroglyphs, where, say, a vulture symbol represents a distinct sound you'd use to spell out a name.
So, while we can't actually read it yet, we have deduced some pretty fascinating clues about how they communicated. For instance, we know for a fact they wrote from right to left. How do we know that? Because on the surviving stone slabs, the symbols on the far left side are all squished and cramped together. It's exactly like when you're writing in a notebook or a birthday card and you suddenly realize you're running out of space at the edge of the page. The ancient engravers had to frantically cram their final symbols together on that left margin.
So, the crucial point is we're stuck. We only understand Egyptian hieroglyphs today because archaeologists got extremely lucky and found the Rosetta Stone, which had the exact same text written in both Egyptian and ancient Greek. It acted like this ancient Google Translate. But for the Indus script, there is no bilingual translation tool. Nothing like that has ever been found. We are so incredibly close to hearing their voices, and yet completely locked out. I think this idea perfectly captures the immense frustration historians face every day with this. Imagine I hand you a book of ancient Chinese literature, but you have absolutely no reference point, no bilingual text, and no living descendants speaking the language. Will you be able to translate it? No way. Deciphering the script without a key is practically impossible. We are entirely permanently locked out of their historical records. However, we do have one incredible cross-cultural clue. There's this specific jar-shaped symbol, which usually appears at the very end of Indus texts, kind of like a full stop. Well, that exact symbol was discovered engraved on stones all the way over in Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq and Iran. So that right there proves active trade and travel between the civilizations. But here is what's truly fascinating. In Mesopotamia, this jar symbol was found repeated twice in a row. That is a pattern that never ever occurs back in the Indus Valley. Historians believe Mesopotamians were basically taking the Indus alphabet and trying to write out their own foreign language, breaking the normal grammatical rules of the Indus script just to do it.
All right, Section 4. Why did they vanish? Sometime between 1900 BC and 1300 BC, this absolute utopian society completely fell apart. And without a translated history to read, we have to look at the physical wreckage they left behind to piece together the story of their demise. Around 1900 BC, archaeological records show this really rapid decline. That meticulous city planning we talked about, it simply ceased. The sewers and road drainages were just left unmaintained. And that magnificent Great Bath in Mohenjo-Daro, it literally filled up with waste. By 1800 BC, most of the cities were just empty. The trade links with Mesopotamia were severed. By 1300 BC, their standardized weights and building ratios were totally abandoned, and by 600 BC, the civilization was entirely gone, just buried under the earth for new cities to be built right on top of them.
Now, what's really interesting here is that this leaves historians with three prime suspects for what wiped them out. And remember, all of this happened without a single invading army. Suspect 1, the Saraswati River, which they relied heavily upon, dried up. This could have been due to tectonic plate shifts or natural course changes, forcing the entire population to abandon their homes and migrate east toward the Ganga River. Suspect 2, severe deforestation. They may have chopped down so many trees to fire those massive brick-making kilns that they absolutely destroy their own environment, making the land unlivable. And suspect 3, a fatal epidemic. Something like cholera or malaria, which historically has the terrifying power to wipe out 70 to 80% of a population when they're living in cramped urban centers. Whatever the true cause actually was, the sheer loss is staggering. 5,000. Let that sink in. That is how many years the civilization is believed to have existed. 5 millennia of peace, advanced urban planning, and cross-cultural trade. All of it completely erased, just buried underground, until James Lewis literally tripped over it thousands of years later.
Which brings us to a pretty haunting question, and it's one you really need to ask yourself. Could it happen to us? We tend to think our modern infrastructure, our global trade networks, and our endless written records make us invincible. But you know what? The Indus Valley civilization probably thought the exact same thing about their covered drains and standardized bricks. They lasted 5,000 years without weapons, without massive social hierarchies, living in this incredibly peaceful urban utopia. Our modern industrialized civilization hasn't existed for even half of that time. If a society that successful and that peaceful could simply vanish into the dirt, what does that mean for our future?